Alright, what's up? I thought I would make a quick video on villains I would like to see in Spider-Man 2 for the PS5. And before we get started, I do want to say that villains like Venom and Kraven will not be mentioned, as, it's pretty much confirmed we're going to see them in this second installment. And Green Goblin will also not be mentioned, as I'm pretty sure they're going to save him for the third game. And, that's totally fine, as I think what they're doing in showing Norman slowly transition into one of Spider-Man's greatest foes is amazing, and I do think the wait's going to be worth it. And I mean, come on, it's Green Goblin. Of course I can't wait to see him. And without further ado, let's get started with the first villain I hope to see in this game, Mysterio. Mysterio is such a unique villain, and he has such a great backstory. And he was teased in the first game, and he's also in the tie-in comics Spider-Man Velocity, which is canon to the Insomniac universe. And I just think Mysterio needs to be in this game. He's such a awesome villain. He's so unique, and it would just be so cool. And we saw Spider-Man get poisoned by Scorpion in the first game, and I feel like that was just a little tease of the amazing visual effects we could see with Mysterio. And I just feel like fighting Mysterio would make for such a jaw-dropping experience. And he doesn't even have to be a main story villain. He could be like a villain we fight at the very beginning of the game, like Kingpin was. He could also be like a side story mission villain. Just either way, it would just be so cool to see Mysterio, and the visual effects, would be just amazing to see. And, speaking of visual effects, could you imagine what Insomniac could do with Sandman? Sandman is such a cool villain, and I think that he would just make for just such a compelling villain to fight against. And I guess what makes him so compelling is that he isn't inherently evil. He's doing what he's doing, for his daughter, and I just feel like that is just such a awesome, I don't know, Sandman is just one of my top 5 favorite villains. And he was also teased in the first game, although, he's in a vial of sand, but I just think that he would make for such an emotional side story, as I do think that he would work best as a side story mission, which is totally fine. Having him as a side story villain, like Hammerhead was, would be perfect. And yeah, Sandman would just be so cool, and I hope he's in this game. Chameleon is also a villain I hope is in the second game. He's underrated, and the lengths he goes to torture Peter are just truly terrifying. In the comics, at one point, he kidnapped Peter and just messed with him, and it was just such a, he's just such a compelling villain, and he's just so underrated, and I know for a fact Insomniac would, do him justice. And, could you imagine seeing him just mess with Peter and Miles on a psychological level? That would be so cool. And without getting into spoilers, he does have a connection with Kraven. I don't want to say it here, because I know, I'm sure some of you playing the game probably don't know much about the Spider-Man universe, which is totally fine. That's totally fine. I'd rather save that for if he's even in the game, and if they do go down that route and decide to utilize that plot point from the comics. Morbius is also a villain I want to see. We did see Dr. Michael Morgan in the first game, and come on, it's already there. They could do so much with this. And again, Morbius does not have to be a main story villain. Could you imagine getting a Halloween update and a Halloween side mission with Morbius as the villain? We could have characters like Blade show up, and Punisher, and that would just be such a cool side story mission. And they could utilize horror aspects in that side story mission, and Dr. Michael Morgan transitioning into the living vampire would be such an emotional side story as well. And I just think that I just hope we do see this character. I think Morbius is another underrated villain. I was always fascinated with Morbius, and having him in the Halloween horror styled mission with Blade would play tribute to the 1994 animated series, and I just think that would be so cool. Seeing Lizard would also be cool, although I do think Lizard is probably going to be saved for Spider-Man 3, but seeing Lizard would be amazing, and he also makes for an emotional, compelling villain. And like Doc Ock was, Dr. Connors is somewhat of a mentor to Peter, someone Peter looks up to, someone Peter idolizes. And I just think seeing that and seeing Peter have to fight Lizard would be very emotional. And we do know Dr. Connors was the Lizard at one point in the Insomniac universe, so I mean, come on, it's there. And like, it's gonna be so cool, and I hope we do see Lizard at some point in this universe. Hopefully in Spider-Man 2. If not Spider-Man 2, hopefully Spider-Man 3. And I guess these other couple villains could be considered honorable mentions, but I would love to see the Enforcers, Puma, the Rose, Swarm, Will-O of the Wisp, Tarantula, Mirage, White Rabbit, Grizzly, Kangaroo, Black Fox, The Answer, Mole Man, Tarantula, Speed Demon, Human Fly, Boomerang, Jack-O-Lantern, Beetle, Manwolf, Smythe, Lightmaster, Sin Eater, and I mean, come on, of course we gotta see Big Wheel and Hobgoblin. I think seeing these villains at some point, maybe most of these villains would definitely work better as side story missions. Oh, and also Hydro Man and Molten Man. Those two would be really cool as well. Yeah, I mean, like, there's just so much they could do with this universe. I mean, I love what they're doing already, and I hope we see some of these villains, especially some of these more obscure villains. Like, there's just so much they could do with these villains. And I mean, could you imagine seeing Kingpin, Hobgoblin as like a side story mission along with Alistair Smythe? I mean, that could play tribute to the 1994 animated series as well. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's all the villains I have written down that I want to see. If there are villains that you guys want to see that I forgot, feel free to comment down below. And I'd love to talk about it with you guys. If there are villains I forgot, feel free to list them down below. Alright, that's pretty much it for this video. Peace off. What? Peace off? Peace out.